Commander Lee Min-ho stared at the holographic display floating above his desk. The blue light cast strange shadows across his weathered face as he read the message for the third time. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. The words on the screen seemed impossible, yet here they were, transmitted across light years of space directly to Earth's defense headquarters. The Galactic Council hereby notifies the inhabitants of Sol 3 that your world has been selected for peaceful integration into the greater galactic community. Compliance is expected within 72 standard hours. Resistance will be met with appropriate measures. Min-ho rubbed his temples. Peaceful integration. He'd seen those words before in history books, usually followed by stories of conquered civilizations. His grandfather had told him similar stories about Earth's own dark past. This felt no different. The comm system crackled to life. "Sir, we're picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Park Jin-woo, his communications officer. "Whatever's coming, it's big." "How big?" Min-ho asked, already knowing he wouldn't like. The answer: 47 ships, sir, each one roughly the size of a small city. Min-ho felt his stomach drop. Earth's entire defense fleet consisted of 12 ships, and that was counting the experimental vessels still in testing. He activated his personal communicator. "Captain Park So-min, report to the bridge immediately." Within minutes, Captain Park. So-min entered the command center. Her uniform was pristine despite having just finished a training exercise with her squadron. She was young for a captain, barely 30, but she'd earned her rank through skill and determination rather than politics. "Sir, my pilots are ready," she said before Min-ho could speak. "We've been monitoring the transmissions. Whatever these aliens want, they're not getting it without a fight." Min-ho appreciated her confidence, but he knew the mathematics. 47. Ships against 12 was suicide. "So-min, we need to think about this strategically. Maybe we can negotiate." "Negotiate what?" So-min's eyes flashed with anger. "They're talking about integration. That's just a fancy word for surrender. My grandmother didn't survive the occupation of Korea just so I could hand over Earth to some alien empire." Before Min-ho could respond, the main view screen activated. A towering figure appeared, easily 3 meters tall with silver skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated skull glowed with an inner light. When it spoke, the voice was deep and resonant, translated by their computers into perfect Korean. "I am Admiral Kethver of the Velkari hegemony. We have arrived to begin the integration process. Your compliance will ensure minimal disruption to your civilization." Min-ho stepped forward. "This is Commander Lee Min-ho of Earth Defense Command. We received your message, but we need time to discuss your proposal with our governments." The alien's 4 eyes seemed to focus directly on him. "Discussion is unnecessary. 734 worlds have undergone successful integration. None required more than standard diplomatic protocols. Your species will adapt quickly to galactic civilization. And if we refuse?" So-min stepped into view, her hand resting on her sidearm out of habit. Admiral Kethvar tilted his massive head. "Refusal is not a recognized response. Previous civilizations have found integration beneficial. Your resistance serves no logical purpose." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in tense silence. Min-ho watched as his officers exchanged worried glances. They all knew what came next. The aliens would wait for Earth's surrender, and when it didn't come, they would take what they wanted by force. "Sir," Park Jin-woo called out from his station, "I'm detecting smaller craft launching from the main fleet. Looks like landing parties." Min-ho closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of his daughter sleeping safely in Seoul, unaware that her world was about to change forever. Then he remembered something his mentor had told him years ago about the old protocols, the emergency plans developed by Earth's first space explorers who had always wondered what they might encounter among the stars. He walked to his personal terminal and entered a code he'd memorized but never expected to use. Deep in the mountain facility, ancient servers hummed to life. The Prometheus protocol, named after the first human ship to leave the solar system, had been designed for exactly this situation. "So-min, get your pilots ready," Min-ho said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "We're going to show these aliens something they haven't seen before." "What's that, sir?" "Humans who refuse to kneel," as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Minho wondered if their defiance would matter against such overwhelming odds. But something deep in his soul, something that had driven humanity to reach for the stars despite every obstacle, told him they had to try. Dr. Kim Tae-hyun hunched over his workstation in the underground research facility, his eyes burning from staring at alien data streams for the past 18 hours. Empty coffee cups littered his desk as he decoded the Velkari communication networks. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The aliens weren't just conquerors. They were psychological warfare experts who had perfected the art of breaking civilizations without firing a shot. Each species they encountered followed the same pattern. First came the overwhelming display of technology, massive ships that could glass entire continents, energy weapons that could slice through mountains, defensive shields that made their vessels nearly invincible. Then came the demonstrations. The Velkari would destroy a few military installations with surgical precision, showcasing their power while keeping casualties relatively low. Most species, faced with such overwhelming technological superiority, simply surrendered. It was logical. It was smart. It saved lives. But as Tae-hyun scrolled through the historical records, he noticed something disturbing. Every conquered species had been reduced to servant status within a generation. Their cultures erased, their people scattered across distant worlds as laborers and technicians. The Velkari called it integration, but it looked like slavery with extra steps. His research was interrupted by the sound of explosions echoing through the facility's reinforced walls. The aliens had finally grown tired of waiting for Earth's surrender. 3 kilometers above, Sergeant Choi Hye-jin crouched behind the twisted remains of a transport vehicle, her rifle pressed against her shoulder. The Velkari landing craft had touched down in the industrial district of Busan like metallic thunderbolts, disgorging squads of silver-armored soldiers who moved with mechanical precision. "Incoming on your 6, Private Lee Dongwoo shouted from across the rubble-strewn street. His voice cracked with fear, but his aim remained steady as he fired controlled bursts at the advancing aliens. Hye-jin watched as her bullets sparked harmlessly off the Velkari energy shields. The aliens weren't even taking cover. They simply walked forward, their plasma rifles charging with an ominous blue glow. She'd seen the footage from other worlds. This was how it always went. A brief, one-sided firefight, followed by surrender, but something nagged at her. The aliens moved like they were following a script, each action predetermined and rehearsed. They expected her unit to break and run after seeing their superior technology. They expected fear to do the work for them. "Chen, flank left," she ordered, using the tactical sign language they'd drilled endlessly. "Minjun, suppress fire on the lead group. Everyone else, watch and learn." The Velkari soldier nearest to her position raised its weapon, the plasma rifle humming with deadly energy. But instead of diving for cover, Hye-jin did something unexpected. She charged directly at it. The alien hesitated for a split second, confused by behavior that didn't match its psychological profile of human responses. That hesitation cost it everything. Hye-jin tackled the towering figure, her momentum carrying both of them to the ground. The alien was stronger, but it had never faced someone who fought dirty. She drove her knife into the gap between its helmet and chest armor, not to kill, but to disable the suit's power systems. Sparks flew as the energy shield flickered and died. The plasma rifle fell from nerveless fingers as the alien struggled to remove its malfunctioning helmet. "The weapons!" Hye-jin shouted as she rolled away from the thrashing alien. "Their tech is integrated into the suits. Disable the suits and the weapons stop working." Private Yoon Soo-jin was the first to understand. She grabbed a discarded plasma rifle and examined it quickly. The weapon was sleek and alien, but the basic principles were familiar. Point and shoot. The power cell connected to the grip, just like their own energy weapons, though far more advanced. "It's biometrically locked," Soo-jin called out as she tried to fire the weapon. "But look at this." She pointed to a series of small ports along the rifle's side. "These look like diagnostic interfaces." Corporal Park Jae-sung, their unit's tech specialist, crawled over under covering fire. His hands worked quickly, pulling tools from his belt that had never been designed for alien technology. "The power routing is similar to our new pulse rifles," he muttered. "If I can bypass the genetic scanner..." The Velkari forces had stopped advancing. Through their helmet displays, they watched human soldiers doing something unprecedented. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, they were adapting, learning, improvising solutions to problems they'd never encountered before. Jae Sung's jury-rigged bypass worked. The plasma rifle hummed to life in Su Jin's hands. She aimed at the nearest Velkari soldier and pulled the trigger. The alien's shield flared and died under the sustained blast of its own weapon. "Impossible," came a translated voice from one of the downed aliens. "No species has ever reverse-engineered our technology in combat conditions." Hyejin picked up another disabled rifle and handed it to Dongwu. "Maybe that's because no one ever tried fighting back instead of giving up." Within minutes, her entire unit was armed with captured Velkari weapons. The aliens found themselves facing their own technology wielded by humans who had learned to use it through pure determination and ingenuity. The tide of battle shifted as more human units across the city began adopting the same tactics. The Velkari had brought superior technology to break human morale, but they hadn't counted on humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and overcome, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Lieutenant Yang Do-hyun's stealth suit had failed him at the worst possible moment. One second he was creeping through the corridors of the Velkari command ship, gathering intelligence on their fleet positions. The next, he was surrounded by silver-armored soldiers, their plasma rifles, trained on his chest. The capture had been almost gentle. No violence, no interrogation. They simply escorted him through gleaming corridors, lined with strange symbols that seemed to shift and flow like living things. The ship's interior was vast, with ceilings that stretched up into darkness and walkways that defied human understanding of architecture. Now he sat in what could only be described as a cell, though it looked more like a luxury hotel room. The walls were transparent from his side, offering a breathtaking view of Earth hanging in the void. His home looked so small and fragile from here, a blue marble surrounded by the massive shapes of the Velkari fleet. The door opened without a sound and a figure entered that made Do-hyun's breath catch in his throat. Unlike the armored soldiers he'd encountered, this Velkari wore no helmet. Her features were almost human, if humans had silver skin that glowed with an inner light and eyes like liquid mercury. She was tall and graceful, moving with the fluid motion of someone comfortable in low gravity. "I am Veltara," she said, her voice carrying musical tones that their translation devices somehow captured perfectly. "I study other species for the hegemony. You are the first human I have met in person." Do-hyun remained silent, remembering his training. Name, rank, and serial number. Nothing else. Veltara seemed to read his thoughts. "I am not here to interrogate you, Lieutenant Yang Do-hyun. Your resistance techniques are admirable, but unnecessary. I wish to understand something that troubles me greatly." She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images of Earth's battles flashed before them, human soldiers adapting Velkari weapons, turning their own technology against them, tactics that shifted mid-fight as humans learned and improvised. "In 700 years of integration campaigns, no species has ever done this," Veltara said, her mercury eyes reflecting the holographic light. "The Zephyrians were master engineers, but they surrendered when they saw our fleet. The Chronari were fierce warriors, but they broke when we demonstrated our weapons. Every species follows the same pattern. They see our superiority and accept the logical outcome." "Maybe we're just too stupid to know when we're beaten," Do-hyun replied, his voice dry. Veltara's expression changed, something that might have been a smile crossing her alien features. "That is what troubles me. You are not stupid. Your species shows remarkable intelligence and adaptability. Yet you refuse to acknowledge obvious defeat. This should not be possible." She waved her hand, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed star maps, vast sections of the galaxy marked in red. "Lieutenant Yang, what I'm about to tell you violates every protocol of the hegemony, but your species' impossible resistance has made me question everything I thought I knew. The red sections of the map pulsed ominously. These are the dead zones, regions of space where entire star systems have simply vanished, not destroyed by war or natural disaster, consumed, absorbed completely, as if they never existed at all. Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. Consumed by what? We call them the Devourers, ancient entities that drift between galaxies, feeding on civilization itself. They consume not just planets or stars, but the very concept of the cultures that built them. When they finish with a region, it becomes empty space. No trace remains that anything ever lived there. The holographic display zoomed in on the edge of the red zones. Do-hyun could see the Velkari fleet positions, forming what looked like a defensive line. "You're not conquerors," he realized. "You're refugees." Veltara's four eyes closed briefly, a gesture that conveyed infinite weariness. "The Devourers destroyed our homeworld 3 centuries ago. We barely escaped with a fraction of our population. Since then, we have been fleeing, always staying ahead of their advance. Then why the conquests? Why not just ask for help?" "Because we tried that once." Her voice carried the weight of old grief. "The Altarians were our allies, a peaceful species with powerful defensive technology. We asked them to stand with us against the Devourers. They agreed, believing their shields could protect both our peoples. The holographic display showed the aftermath, empty space where a star system should have been. The Devourers consumed them utterly. Their technology, their culture, their very existence was erased from reality. We learned that asking for help only brings destruction to those who try to aid us." Do-hyun began to understand. "So you decided to build an army instead. Force species to join you whether they wanted to or not." "Precisely. We believed that if we could gather enough civilizations under our protection, we might finally have the strength to make a stand. But every species we integrated became compliant, dependent on our technology and leadership. They lost the very qualities that made them unique." She looked directly at him, her mercury eyes reflecting something that might have been hope. "Until we encountered humans. Your people do not break, they do not become compliant. They adapt and fight back with a ferocity we have never encountered. Even now, facing impossible odds, you refuse to surrender." "That's just who we are," Do-hyun said quietly. "No," Veltara replied, her voice filled with growing excitement. "That is exactly what we need. The Devourers consume civilizations by breaking their will to resist. They feed on despair and acceptance of defeat. But humans seem incapable of truly giving up." The realization hit Do-hyun like a physical blow. "You think we can fight them?" "I think you might be the only species in the galaxy that can." Captain Namji-woo gripped the armrest of his command chair as the Joint Strike Force dropped out of hyperspace. The sight that greeted them defied every law of physics, he thought. He understood. The Devourer scout ship hung in the void like a wound in reality itself, a twisted mass of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Sensors are going crazy," reported Lieutenant Kim Hanul from the navigation station. "That thing is pulling in energy from everything around it. Even the background radiation of space is being drawn toward it." Beside Ji-woo's human frigate, 3 Velkari vessels held formation. Their silver hulls gleamed with advanced shielding technology that had protected them for centuries. Commander Veltara's voice crackled through the communication system, her translated words carrying an edge of fear Ji-woo had never heard from a Velkari before. "Captain Nam, we are detecting massive energy drain effects. The entity is already beginning to feed on our power systems. We must strike quickly before our weapons become useless." Ji-woo nodded grimly. In the past week since the unlikely alliance had formed, he'd learned to respect the Velkari scientist's insights. Her people had faced these cosmic horrors before and barely survived. Now humanity's first encounter with a devourer would test whether their species could succeed where others had failed. "All ships, prepare for coordinated assault," Ji-woo commanded. "Target the central mass with everything we have." The Velkari vessels opened fire first. Their plasma cannons unleashed streams of superheated energy that could melt through asteroid fields. The beams struck the Devourer's hull and simply vanished. absorbed into the creature's dark surface without leaving so much as a scorch mark. "Impossible," came Veltara's voice over the comm. "Our weapons have no effect whatsoever." Jiwoo watched his tactical display with growing alarm. The energy readings from his own ship were dropping rapidly. The Devourer wasn't just absorbing their weapons. It was draining power from their engines, life support, even the lights in the corridors. "Captain, we're losing main power," called out Engineer Bae Soo-jin from the engine room. "Whatever that thing is doing, it's pulling energy right through our hull. Our plasma conduits are shutting down one by one." The bridge lights flickered and dimmed. Around them, the Valkyrie ships were faring even worse. Their advanced energy shields, designed to deflect any known weapon, were actually making them more vulnerable. The more sophisticated their technology, the more the Devourer seemed able to feed on it. "This is why they always win," Jiwoo realized aloud. "Every advanced civilization relies on energy-based technology. The more powerful your weapons and shields, the more food you provide for these things." Through the view screen, he watched one of the Valkyrie vessels go completely dark. It drifted helplessly as the Devourer's influence drained every joule of power from its systems. Emergency lights flickered on briefly, then died as those backup systems were consumed as well. "Captain?" Sojin's voice came through the intercom, but now she sounded excited rather than panicked. "I have an idea, but you're going to think I'm crazy." "I already think you're crazy, Soo-jin. That's why you're my engineer. What do you need?" "Permission to shut down everything. All power systems, all energy weapons, everything electronic except basic life support." Jiwoo felt his stomach drop. "That would leave us completely defenseless." "No, sir, it would leave us invisible to that thing. But more importantly, it would let us use weapons it can't absorb." "What weapons?" "The old ones, sir. Kinetic weapons, bullets, missiles with chemical explosives, anything that doesn't rely on energy fields or plasma. That thing feeds on advanced technology, but it can't absorb a chunk of metal traveling at high velocity." Jiwoo looked around his darkening bridge. His officers stared back at him with a mixture of hope and terror. It was the most desperate plan he'd ever heard, and it just might work. "Do it," he ordered. "Shut us down and prep the kinetic weapons." The ship fell silent except for the hum of minimal life support. The lights went out completely, leaving only the pale glow of emergency chemical illuminators. On the tactical display, their ship's energy signature vanished. To the Devourer, they had simply ceased to exist. Soo-jin's voice echoed through the ship's mechanical intercom system, no longer dependent on electronic circuits. "Captain, I've rigged our old missile tubes with solid fuel rockets. No guidance. Systems, no energy signatures. Just old-fashioned explosives that we'll have to aim manually." "Like firing a cannon," Jiwoo murmured, remembering history lessons about ancient naval warfare. Through the view screen, they watched the Devourer continue to feed on the remaining Valkyrie ships. But now something had changed. The creature's attention was focused entirely on the energy-rich alien vessels. It had no awareness of the human ship drifting silently nearby. "Fire," Jiwoo whispered. The ship shuddered as chemical rockets ignited, launching simple metal projectiles toward the Devourer. No targeting computers guided them, just human calculations and intuition. The first missile struck the creature's hull and exploded in a brilliant flash of chemical fire. For the first time in the battle, the Devourer reacted. Its twisted form writhed as the primitive explosion tore through its dark surface. Unlike energy weapons, the simple chemical reaction couldn't be absorbed or neutralized. "Hey, it's working," Soo-jin shouted through the intercom. "The thing can't feed on basic chemistry. Fire everything we have." More missiles streaked through space, each one a testament to humanity's oldest technologies: gunpowder, metal, and the simple physics of explosion and momentum. The Devourer's hull began to crack and burn under the assault of weapons that would have been outdated 1,000 years ago. Veltara's voice crackled through their emergency radio. "Remarkable. Your primitive weapons are more effective than our most advanced technology." Jiwoo smiled grimly as he watched the Devourer writhe under their assault. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The Grand Council chamber aboard the Valkyrie flagship had never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Admiral Kethavar stood before representatives from dozens of species, his 4 eyes reflecting the holographic displays that showed the approaching Devourer mothership. The massive entity drifted through space like a cancer, consuming entire star systems as it advanced toward the galactic core. But today, for the first time in centuries, HFY wasn't speaking as a conqueror addressing his subjects. He was making a request. "Honored allies," he began, the translation matrix carrying his words to every species present. "The success of the human kinetic weapon strategy has proven that our enemy can be defeated. But the mothership approaching our position is not a mere scout. It is a world killer, capable of consuming entire fleets in minutes." President Oh Seung-hwan sat at the circular table, his modest suit contrasting sharply with the elaborate ceremonial armor worn by other species representatives. He'd arrived on Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, a ship that looked primitive compared to the gleaming Velkari craft, but had proven its worth in combat. "Admiral," President Oh said calmly, "3 weeks ago, your people came to Earth demanding our surrender. Today you're asking for our help. Why should we trust that this alliance is genuine?" The chamber fell silent. Other species representatives shifted uncomfortably, unused to anyone speaking so directly to the mighty Velkari admiral. But HFY's response surprised everyone. "Because, President Oh, we were wrong." The admission seemed to physically pain the proud alien. "For 700 years we believed that survival required absolute control. We thought that by forcing unity we could create strength. Instead, we created weakness." He gestured to the tactical displays showing the approaching mothership. "Every species we integrated became dependent on our technology, our leadership, our way of thinking. When faced with the impossible, they looked to us for solutions. But the impossible cannot be solved by following the same patterns that failed before." Commander Lee Min-ho watched from the observation deck as President Oh leaned forward. The past month had aged the president visibly, but his eyes remained sharp. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" "An alliance of equals," HFY replied. "Not integration, not subjugation. Partnership, each species contributing their unique strengths while maintaining their independence. The Zephyrians will provide their engineering expertise. The Chronari offer their tactical knowledge. The Altarian survivors bring their defensive technologies." "And humans?" President Oh asked. "Humans bring something we had forgotten existed," HFY said softly. "Hope in the face of hopelessness. The ability to find new solutions when all conventional wisdom says none exist." Min-ho smiled at that. Over the past weeks, he'd watched human engineers working alongside alien scientists, jury-rigging weapons that shouldn't work according to galactic standards. They'd combined Zephyrian metallurgy with human gunpowder, creating shells that could punch through Devourer hulls. Chronari navigation systems were paired with human intuition to plot attack runs that no computer would recommend, but somehow succeeded. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed to the alliance, not as subjects of the Velkari hegemony, but as independent partners facing a common threat. 3 days later, Min-ho stood on the bridge of the combined fleet's flagship, watching the largest armada in galactic history prepare for battle. Human ships flew alongside Velkari cruisers, their hulls modified with kinetic weapon systems that looked absurdly primitive next to energy cannons, but had proven devastatingly effective. "Devourer mothership detected," announced Lieutenant Park Jin-woo. "Distance 50,000 kilometers and closing." Through the main view screen, Min-ho saw their enemy for the first time. The mothership defied description, a writhing mass of dark matter that seemed to bend space around itself. It was easily the size of Earth's moon, covered in tentacle-like appendages that reached out to feed on the energy of nearby stars. "All ships, this is Admiral HFY," came the voice over the fleet communications. "Today, we do not fight as conquerors or subjects. We fight as allies, each contributing our unique gifts to this battle." Captain Park So-min's voice joined the channel from her fighter squadron. "Human fighters are armed and ready. We've got enough old-fashioned explosives to light up half the galaxy," Engineer Bae Soo-jin reported from the weapons deck. "Kinetic. Launchers are loaded with Zephyrian penetrator rounds. These things could punch through a planet if we aimed them right." As the battle began, Minho watched something beautiful unfold. The Velkari ships used their superior speed and shields to draw the mothership's attention, while human vessels approached from unexpected angles. Zephyrian engineers had reinforced human missile systems with materials that could survive the journey through the creature's energy-draining field. Chronari tactical computers calculated firing solutions, while human pilots ignored the computers entirely, following instincts that led them to success. The mothership writhed and screamed as kinetic weapons tore through its dark flesh. For the first time in galactic history, a devourer was not feeding but bleeding. Ancient evil met something it had never encountered before, species working together not out of fear, but out of hope. "It's working," Veltara's voice came through the communications array. "The creature is losing cohesion. Its ability to drain energy is failing." Minho felt tears in his eyes as he watched the battle turn. Humanity hadn't just brought weapons to this fight. They'd brought something far more valuable: the belief that impossible odds could be overcome if you refused to give up and work together. The mothership's death throes lit up the darkness of space like a newborn star, and in that light, the galaxy saw its future, not as conquered subjects of any single species, but as partners in the greatest adventure of all, survival against the impossible. The end.